Hello listeners everywhere. Welcome to the Archive of Audio Antiquities, a voyage into the vaults of wonders on the wireless. In a moment, Simon Exton and Ken Moss will be here to speak to you.
Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome back to the Archive of Audio Antiquities. I'm Ken Moss.
I'm Simon Exton.
And this time we are listening to the CD soundtrack of the missing Doctor Who television story, The Space Pirates. The TARDIS materialises in Earth's future on a space beacon just before it's attacked by the pirates led by Cavan. The travellers find themselves trapped in a sealed section of the beacon that is blown apart and flown to where the pirates will plunder it of the precious mineral argonite. They witness a conflict between the pirates and the Interstellar Space Corps led by General Hermack and Major Warren. This is the second story written by Robert Holmes, one of the show's most successful scriptwriters. Only one of the 6 episodes is held in the BBC archives, 5 remain missing, and chronologically this is the last story to contain missing episodes.
All personnel, this is General Hermack. It is my belief that the criminals are attacking the government navigation beacon and plundering the argonite. There can be no other explanation for its failure.
Hunt them down and don't forget, shoot to kill.
But Doctor, what can we do?
But I don't know.
We're worse off now. Just floating hopelessly in space.
What a silly idiot I am.
Jamie, no!
This is part of a little mini pirate series that we're going to be having. So get ready for several months of main brace splicing and all that good stuff. I've not listened to the Space Pirates in a few years. And I really enjoyed listening to it. And I got very enthused and wrote a load of notes. And then was slightly less than organised and left them all at work.
But you've remembered
I don't
most
think
of
there's
it.
alumni for any other Doctor Who stories. Jack May was obviously Sims in Adam Adamant Lives.
And I possibly know him best from Hitchhiker's Guide. He was the waiter at Milliways. We've come to this quite deliberately first in our little pirate season because the Space Pirates has a very bad reputation for being dull as shit within Doctor Who fandom, and neither Simon nor myself have ever held that view. The sole surviving episode is episode 2. It's not the fastest paced episode, but we recorded it just for fun for the Exton Moss experiment as a one-off, and we were completely hooked for 25 minutes. Simon, what's your view on this?
I really like it. It's probably enemy of the world syndrome, where if the whole lot were recovered, you'd see that the surviving episode we have is the dullest out of quite a good story. The other thing I think is that the later episodes where they're running around along the mine shafts and things like that, I think that probably suffers from Web of Fear 4 syndrome, where it doesn't sound terribly exciting because it's very visual.
I would possibly agree with you. I've not listened to the Space Pirates for quite a few years, and I've never held the same downer on it that the majority of fandom has. But I've viewed it or listened to it with different ears this time, listening out for why people think it's so dull. The one thing I'll say is, I agree with you entirely that the last few episodes in particular, they are very visual. So the audio soundtrack, there's an awful lot of the Doctor and co journeying from place to place, simply being either locked up or trapped. They don't have a lot to do with the story. And it's one of those rare Doctor Who stories where if you take the Doctor and company out of it, nothing would change at all.
I'll tell you what's even rarer, and I never realised this until listening to it and taking a bit of notice of what was going on. It's the only time I can think of in the entire run of Doctor Who where the TARDIS team never split up. All three of them stay together with the exception of two scenes. The cliffhanger from episode 5 where the Doctor is caught in the exhaust blast from the Liz as she's taking off. And obviously Jamie and Zoe couldn't be there because it would kill them, whereas it didn't kill him. And the bit where he's defusing the bomb in the radiation room and there's only one radiation suit. Other than that, Jamie and Zoe never leave his side. And I can't think of a single other story where that happens.
Well, technically, Edge of Destruction.
No, they separate off into different sets. You get Barbara and Susan in their sleeping area, and you got.
Oh, you mean so they're all in every scene? I'd not clocked that. I've got to be honest.
Yeah. Now, as I understand it, there was quite a lot of minimising the roles for the three leads, so that they could be freed up to do location work for the start of the War Games.
The tail end of season 6 is in a bit of trouble, really, because it wasn't supposed to be structured the way that it is. But there's quite a bit of cost cutting. I mean, the War Games, we all know that it should never have been 10 episodes long. That was just a necessity. And the Space Pirates, as you've just elucidated there, is slightly different in order to accommodate what was to come immediately down the line. I don't think any of the season 6 stories are lauded as classics, are they? I'm just going through them in my head, but you're going to point out one now that's a belter.
Well, lots of people like The Mind Robber.
Yes.
I don't think it's a classic, but I do like it.
Yeah, I'm not blown away by any of the season 6 stuff, because what is there? There's the Croutons, the Dominators.
Which I like. I mean, I like all of them, but they're Troughton. And Jamie and Zoe work really well together as a team in a way that Jamie and Victoria pretty much didn't. Which is no disrespect to Debbie Watling. You see her in other things. She is a very good, capable, engaged, dynamic actress. It's entirely down to the fact that this is the way that the character was written, but it is the way the character was written.
And no, I'd have to agree with you on that. Victoria was there to scream and be a bit of eye candy for Jamie.
And the rest. She was the last of the surrogate granddaughters.
Yes, the very last, really, wasn't she? Yeah.
Well, until you get to Adric.
Yes, we'll park that there.
But anyway, we're not talking about Victoria, we're talking about the Space Pirates, and I really enjoyed it. It's a cracking little story. There's some interestingly incompetent characters. So Hermack with his alternating RP and vaguely Russian accent just seems a bit inept, doesn't he? He's got this massive, great flying fortress that has enough people on it to drop a platoon off at each of these stations. And he seems to do nothing but run around and react. And then Ian, whatever his name is, the one that gets squeezed into the tiny little scout ship and sent off, which frankly you'd want to do because he was very irritating.
Most of them were, though. See, Hermack's plan was, it was all held together by magnets. So put people on the segments of space station that had all been separated and were going to be collected later to plunder, and then you'd eventually capture the pirates. But he's supposed to be in this state-of-the-art, basically Enterprise, gliding about the galaxy, and he's outwitted by a bunch of thugs in an old tin can. Oh, we've missed them again! How? For 6 episodes, how have you managed to miss these space pirates? And this aging old, what's the word?
Codger.
Well, he's certainly that. Gordon Gostelow plays Milo Clancy. He's easily my favourite character in this, because he doesn't give a toss.
He is fun.
Oh, he's wonderful. Wonderful. The accent is all over the place, but Milo Clancy, comfortably, hands down, favourite character in the Space Pirates. He spent 20 years out in space all on his own, doing whatever he does to get by, and then the proper space police come along and he's like, right, fuck off, I've been doing this longer than you have, Sonny Jim. I've been flying about the galaxy in a go-kart with a piece of string and a squib, and that's how I've been getting about, and so don't come telling me how technology works. Not interested. With his boiled egg. Aw, that's a lovely scene with the boiled egg.
I do really like the portrayal. The whole Wild West yeehaw accent thing gets a little irritating because I don't particularly like cowboy stuff. And we had this with the gunfighters. But he does a great job of it and he's very entertaining.
Yeah, they've got a nice mix of styles. I've got to be honest, I can't remember what happens in the end to daughter of the Seagreen Mining Company, who's clearly
Madeline, with her lovely hat.
Yes, who's been double-crossing everybody, but I bet she gets away with this in the end.
But very ineptly. She's really not terribly competent. She's sort of, oh, Daddy's gone away, so I need somebody else to tell me what to do. Mr. Nasty Person, will you please do that? Oh, but I never said we would kill anybody.
What are all these guns and explosives and bang-bang pews? You mean they're going to be unalived?
Yeah, she wasn't quite Paula, but she wasn't terribly far off.
Or she was cruising in dangerously Paula territory. I've overthrown the Seagreen Mining Corporation, I've usurped it, and now I've got into bed with the pirates, and we're going to fly about the galaxy, getting ill-gotten gains, and what that means we're going to have to do bad things, does it? Bad things? No. You dim-witted oaf.
But, I mean, to be fair to her, there aren't an awful lot of particularly capable people in this. There's Craven, there's Milo. Dom just wanders around utterly shell-shocked, which is what he's supposed to do.
Spoiler alert, kids. The old man who's supposed to be dead isn't dead. Dun, dun, dun.
Shocker. Warren just gets sent out to fly about in a little tin can. The Hermac bounces from one bad idea to the next. The character of Sober, it was Sober, wasn't it? The one who got shot at the beginning.
Yes.
Is pointless. Okay, he's there at the beginning in the ambush on the station and he gets shot. You can see the point of that. And then he turns up a few episodes later on where they've recognised he's alive and taken him off the beacon. Fair enough, they probably want to interrogate him a bit. But then this incredibly sadistic and keen on murder pirate just chucks him in a room and keeps him alive on the off chance that he might turn out to be useful. And the thing he turns out to be useful for is turning up later and getting killed in front of Madeline and making her realise that, Mr. Craven, you're not terribly nice, are you?
I don't want you to kill my daddy.
Wrong.
Please don't kill my daddy. You've killed my daddy and his friends. No. They're still alive, my daddy. No. Yes, it is full of completely and utterly inept characters.
And if I go to prison, can I keep my lovely shiny hat?
If I go to prison, can I keep my freedom? Yeah, she is that level of inept.
And that shiny hat is one of the most 60s things that has ever graced Doctor Who. It's not quite as bad as the white cross sunglasses that the scientists have in the
war games.
In the war games.
And the psychedelic wallpaper they have in the laboratory.
Or the psychedelic dresses that the technicians have in the Ice Warriors. But it's not terribly far off. And it looks bloody silly. I mean, it does ramp up to a very nice couple of quite tense climaxes. So they're getting their control of the Liz back, with Milo doing his pseudo-doctor, pulling about every bit of wire that they can find in some sort of psychotic cat's nest, and the doctor defusing the bomb at the nuclear plant on Tar. Both of those work very well. I suspect this is a visual story that more than most falls over from not having the visuals. But the thing I did like about the soundtrack is the incidental music when they're in space and all that Star Trek original series synchronized screaming. I think that worked brilliantly.
Mentally, I've always had this musically linked with the Ice Warriors because of all that operatic and on playback, actually, they're wildly different.
But both fantastic. And, I remember you talking about, was it Mark Ayres that did the
I asked
audio
Mark
recovery,
Ayres.
and he said that this was by far his least favourite because he felt that the audio was so flat.
This was the one he found most boring. The one he said was most flat was Web Planet, and that he would like to go back and do a special edition of Web Planet and basically fill in the atmosphere of Vortis. But no, the Space Pirates was the one that he found the most boring to restore. And he did Celestial Toymaker. Just a couple of little snippets of trivia. This serial was written as a replacement for The Dream Spinner by Paul Wheeler, which was dropped for technical reasons at a very late stage. Big Finish, Where Are You? I've never heard of this one. And episode 6 is one of only 2 episodes from the 1960s where the entire main cast were all away on location filming, so they only appear by filmed inserts. The other one being Mission to the Unknown, which didn't have any of them at all. And the final thing is that this was the very first serial to feature John Nathan Turner on the staff. He was the floor assistant.
I've just had a little look at the IMDb credit for Sub Paula. And she was one of the regulars in the 1958-1959 Invisible Man, alongside Deborah Watling in her first starring role. I think she was in this as a child actor.
Yeah, because she wasn't that old in Doctor Who, was she? Was she late teens, possibly?
No, she was early to mid-20s, I think. Born in 1948, so... Yeah, actually, she'd have been 19 in Doctor Who, wouldn't she?
More little vignettes. Episode 1 was the final episode filmed at Lime Grove. Episode 2 was unusually filmed on 35mm film, which is why it's the only episode that survives, as it was historically significant.
I don't think it's because it was historically significant. It's because of the handful of films that were transmitted from 35mm rather than videotape were stored in the film library and so weren't wiped when the rest of the masters were wiped, because almost all of the episodes transmitted from 35mm film survive. It's why we have things like Underwater Menace 3 and Wheel in Space 6, because they were all transmitted from film. And the two others that were transmitted from film that don't survive are Power of the Daleks 6 and Wheel in Space 5. And there's no record as to where they went to.
Final little notes. In 1999, episode 2 was found on a domestic recording, and it's the only known episode of 1960s Doctor Who to have been recorded and preserved on a homemade tape. Mary Thomas provides the uncredited vocals that accompanied Dudley Simpson's score. So there we go, we've found the opera singer. Robert Holmes originally intended this to be a 4-part serial, and it's the only serial that Michael Hart directed.
And I think Michael Hart is one of the very few surviving 1960s directors. I looked them all up a while ago, and I think the only ones surviving that directed more than one story are Waris Hussein and Richard Martin.
One final little bit of trivia. There are no telesnaps surviving for this. Just as a final aside, before we dive into earworms, what are your recollections of the recons? I think we all know primarily, for fans of a certain vintage, the loose cannon recons. There were other fan groups that did them. Joint Venture, I seem to remember, they did theirs. But recons-wise, what's your history with them?
I never saw very many of them. The first one I saw was Mission to the Unknown, I think.
Oh, not a good one to start with.
And it kind of put me off, and I didn't really put too much extra effort into finding things. I made a point of finding and watching and quite liked was the Power of the Daleks. But, it's the Power of the Daleks. And I hadn't heard the soundtrack at that point, so...
It has to be said, Power of the Daleks is still the most exciting of the Lost Stories. Well, it is to me. Even though I absolutely adore Dalek's Master Plan, that is the one I would love to see recovered most. It's still eclipsed by Power of the Daleks. Even 10th Planet 4, which everybody wants to see back, but in all honesty, we've got the important bit, and it's not that exciting. Power of the Daleks I would love to see from beginning to end. So yeah. Let's rate this in earworms.
This is the song that never ends. Yes, it goes on and on, my friends.
Dr. Exton, what's she going for?
This is a difficult one, because although it's a very enjoyable listen, I suspect it is nowhere near as enjoyable as the original video would have been.
Got to agree with you there, yes.
There are chunks of, particularly around about episodes 4 and 5, where they're running around through all the tunnels that probably looked quite exciting, but are flat on audio. But overall, I did enjoy it. I wasn't bored by any of the 6 episodes. I listened to it in 2-3 episode spells and wasn't bored by it for a second. So I'm going to give it a 7.
It's a 7 from me as well. I've never had quite the downer on it that fandom has done. But playing it back and analysing it for what it actually is, it's enjoyable. It kept me marvellously entertained for 6 episodes. It's not the very best that Doctor Who has to offer. It's not the very best that 1960s Doctor Who has to offer, and there's a lot of better examples out there. However, I think it's unfairly maligned, and I would have to echo all your views there that if this turned up on video, I suspect it would be reappraised massively, a la The Enemy of the World.
And they'll continue singing it forever just because.
It's time for Podcast of the Week.
We always try and choose a Doctor Who podcast for when we're talking about Doctor Who stories. And rather than going for one of the long established, but, very good podcasts that we've gone for previously, I'm going to go for an absolutely brand new podcast that has only had its first episode this week. It is Who Review.
Mikey and Who, now available on Apple, Spotify and the other ones. Mikey and Who
Mark, why does the Doctor keep stepping on things? Has he got carpal tunnel?
He's just so excited about where he is.
What would you like to see the Doctor step on next?
It's by a local to me Stoke-on-Trent podcaster called Mikey Smith.
Oh, hello. He's been very enthusiastic about us. Hello, Mikey.
He has. He even mentions us on the podcast, which doesn't exactly have nothing to do with why we're recommending this, but I'm mainly recommending it because it's wildly entertaining. And they've done the first episode on space babies.
Okay.
And very entertaining it was, and I'm looking forward to more.
Splendid. Well, we're always encouraging indie podcasts, so yes, go Mikey. Well done.
Woohoo!
You'll be hearing from my lawyers, and I'm sending the boys round.
Which boys?
The Backstreet Boys?
That was our take on the Space Pirates, and it is episode 1 of our little pirate mini-series. We will be coming back next month with, oh God, we can't avoid doing it. Big Finish's Doctor Who and the Pirates. I will pull no punches. I hated this when I first listened to it. I thought it was one of the worst things I'd ever heard of, and it is the reason that I stopped listening to the Big Finish main range. Well, a final nail in the coffin. There were things that had gone on before it that I didn't like. But this is the thing where I listened to it and I just thought, dear God above, is this what we've come to?
I'm going to restrain myself here because it's one that I've got to be honest, I've never actually got to the end of. So,
right. Well, we're going to get to the end of it. I'm going to listen to it for a second time. You're going to listen to it all the way through for a first time, and we will talk about it. Can't say we'll be complimentary, but we will talk about it. After that, we're sticking with Big Finish, and we're doing their adaptation of Treasure Island, which I'm really rather looking forward to. You've heard it, I haven't.
Oh, no, I haven't heard it yet. I've bought it, but I've not heard it. I've been saving this.
Yeah. And then we're finishing with the one I'm really looking forward to, one I absolutely love, the season 4 Doctor Who story, The Smugglers. Very
Spoiler
well,
alert,
Jamaica.
The Smugglers is not going to be a balanced review. Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert. Whee!
Yaha. Until next time, boys and girls.
Splice the main brace.
You love that phrase, don't you?
It's the only piratey one I can think of because despite having lived in Cornwall and Daphne du Maurier territory and having drunk in Jamaica, I don't actually know an awful lot about pirates.
Piratical stuff is one of my favourite things from history. I absolutely adore it. It just conjures up wonderful imagery. Almost certainly nothing true to life, but it conjures up
You
wonderful
like the
imagery.
frilly shirts and the velvet coats.
You're stereotyping, but accurately.
Well, don't deny it, because I wouldn't believe you if you denied it. If you could get away with wandering around Rishton dressed as a buccaneer, you would do.
I do. Until next time, boys and girls, with cutlass between me teeth, me hearties. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon. Kyar!
If you keep your cutlass between your hearties, it doesn't sound like a safe thing to do. We'll see you next time.
The archive of audio antiquities featured Simon Exton and Ken Moss, and the announcer was Jenny at Blue Box 99. All featured soundtracks are the property of their respective producers, and no infringement of copyright is intended. Title music was by Edward White, and the programme was produced by Maverick Productions. For more information, please visit maverickproductionsuk.blogspot.com or find us on social media.